Good morning, everyone. Jerome Harris here from epiphatic.com. Several months ago, I was in Chicago doing some sightseeing, and I was born and raised about 90 miles north of Chicago in Wisconsin. But I was in Chicago and I ran across a group of air quote Christians. They were out there, must have been about maybe 7 or 8 of them, and these were young people out there talking to people. Now, on that day, I was out with my camera, just taking photographs, and they approached me. I mean, we're talking a gang of them. They approached me. I guess I looked approachable, and I try to be approachable to all and friendly to all. And they looked just like this right here. I mean, obviously, this is not them, but I'm saying it's the demeanor. They're all smiling and happy, and or at least they were putting on a pretense that they were. The leader of the group asked me the question. He says, do you believe in God? No, I'm sorry. He said, do you believe that Jesus is God? And, they're all smiling and probably expecting me to say, yes, I do. And I said, no, I don't. I believe that Jesus is the Son of God. And this demeanor that you see right here with all these smiling faces disappeared just like that. So without going into the full story as to what had happened, that conversation that we had must have lasted for probably more than an hour until they got tired of me and they had to leave. They had to leave. They just couldn't deal with what I was talking about. My point here is that Christianity wants to present this image to the world. Now, notice I use the expression image. An image doesn't always have to mean that someone takes some clay or something and they form an image. Like Moses' brother formed the golden calf, an image of a golden calf. An image can be this as well. And this other imagery that you're seeing in the background, which I'm going to explain this. But my point here is that this is what Christianity presents before the whole world. And this is not the reality. Does one think that back in Jesus' day, he and his disciples were walking around like this, smiling at everything? No, not at all. Now, back here, this is an image, a representation of the one that the world knows as Jesus Christ. Now, I don't believe he looked like this. I don't believe that any of us know what he looked like, because none of us today were back then to be able to describe what he looked like. So, but this is just an image, and the reason why I put this up here is to show, look what he had to go through. I mean, he was beaten, he was scourged, he died a violent and torturous death. Can you imagine being beaten and stabbed and having a crown of thorns thrust upon your head, and being nailed to a torture stake, a staru, not a cross, or what the Roman government used, a religious symbol called a cross, and put him to death, or even others that they viewed as dissenters and criminals to death. But he died on a what's called a torture stake or a staru. But imagine being nailed to that thing, and then being hoisted up, and then having them lower, that is the Roman soldiers lower that torture stake into a hole dug out for it, and it's just slammed into that hole, and you're nailed up there. Every nerve and sinew in your body must have been rattling. The pain must have been indescribable. So that's nothing to smile about. And even before they laid hands on him to put him to death, he was always looking over his shoulder out of fear of someone trying to lay hold on him and take his life. So his reality was not this right here, what we see here. Now, if we look at his disciples and the apostles that he chose, I put this image up here because it shows that even they weren't walking around like this right here. This is a false image. And in my view, Christianity is false because this is what it pushes upon the world. It doesn't present to the world reality. It's false images. But as I was saying, Christ's disciples and his apostles They endured terrible deaths. Peter, for example, he was sentenced to death in the very same way that his master was, a torture stake. Andrew was severely scourged, and he was nailed to or torture stake like his master. But Andrew hung there for 2 full days before he died. And James, the son of Zebedee, he was decapitated. James, the son of Alphaeus, was stoned to death. Now, he was stoned to death, but he didn't die from the stoning. He was severely hurt, but what killed him was the severe clubbing that he had to endure. Well, he didn't endure, but he died from the clubbing. Bartholomew, he died from decapitation. Jesus' cousin, John the Baptizer. For those of you who know your Bibles, you know that he had his head cut off. Thomas was stabbed to death. Matthew was stabbed to death. And we all know the story about Judas Iscariot. He died violently by hanging. He hung himself in a tree. And then when the tree branch or limb broke, he fell to a rocky death over a cliff. So none of them were walking around like this. And as I said earlier, that those group of young people that I met in Chicago in this beautiful square down there over this some kind of fountain, when they asked me that question, do you believe that Jesus is God? And I answered no. Their demeanor, all this right here, went away. So what's going on there? What is that? See, that's a false image. I'm not saying that one shouldn't walk around without smiling and being happy. What I want individuals to always keep in the back of their minds, that this is not the reality of those who claim that they are followers of Christ. No one's walking around like this. When I see this, I become very concerned because it doesn't look genuine. It just looks fake and false. Now, within the world that we live in, this is reality. Look at these images. 20 million people or more are starving in the world today. And I've witnessed this, having worked overseas for just over 6 years as a foreign service officer in lands like this. Look at these images. Just let it sink in. Why are those people smiling? The ones that I just showed you. This is horrible. And this is the result of man's inhumanity to man. One can't blame this on the devil. That takes the path of least resistance. It's very easy to blame the devil for wars and famine and all the terrible things that's happened in Earth's history, when the reality is we are responsible for what we have done to one another. You know, others will say, oh, this is because of the devil. No, it's not. This is because of us as human beings. The devil doesn't have to do anything because we're doing it to one another. But this is painful to watch. And this is not even 1/10 of it. If I were to, say, type in a keyword such as lynchings, and that's just here in the United States, look at this. Look at these images. And you've got, these are individuals, and there's several in here of people who've lynched Black Americans back in the day, you know, my ancestors, from trees. And I won't go into the terrible stories because many of you won't be able to bear it. And some don't even want to deal with it. But you've got individuals who have claimed that they are Christians who would do this, hang a man by the neck like that. and then posing in front of it. Proud Christian Americans. So when I see this right here, I know that this is an reality. And approaching someone in this way and asking them if they believe that Jesus is God, or trying to get those persons that they're talking to accept their literature and join their particular church groups, I don't think so. This is not the reality. This is not the world that we live in. And it certainly wasn't the world that Christ lived in. Many don't realize that very difficult times are yet ahead, not only for this dying world. We're on a sinking ship here, and we're treading water. As water enters into the ship, people are just scooping water out and throwing it overboard to keep that ship afloat. But in time, this sinking ship of a world that we live in is going to go under. All one has to do is read Daniel chapter 2, verse 44. That's one of many scriptures I can produce to you, and I'll put it on the screen here so you can read it for yourself. But we are on a sinking ship. And if Christ's followers endured terrible deaths and hardships, and I should also mention too, even persons who were not followers of Christ, but knew of him and who were on the fringes of maybe becoming a follower of his, were also sought after, and many sought to do them harm. In fact, one of those persons who sought to do harm to the followers of Christ was a man by the name of Saul of Tarsus. And many of you know that later on he became the Apostle Paul. So there are difficult times yet ahead, and especially for those who are true followers of Christ. You, myself, will be put to a severe test. Remember now, the Apostle Peter was very confident that he would not deny Christ. And he did. He denied him 3 times. When the pressure came, did he not? So many of us can huff and puff and say, I won't do that. Yeah, we'll see. When the Great Tribulation comes upon us, and when I say upon us, I'm referring to those who are true followers of Christ. You see, the Great Tribulation isn't going to come upon those who are not followers of Christ. Why is that? Because in future days, everyone will be followers of Christ. But their faith will be put to the test. And the Great Tribulation will be that mechanism or tool that will weed out, or that will separate the sheep from the goats, the chaff from the wheat, the weeds from the wheat, and there will be some severe testing. And then those who come out on the other side, as Jesus said there at Matthew chapter 10, verse 22, those who endure to the end will be saved. Then they'll be saved. No one's going to be saved without being tested. And that testing period is not now. That's yet future. All have to be brought under the same umbrella, the same roof. And that's going to occur in distant future days as a result of Christ's 1,000-year kingdom or millennium over the earth. And all of us will go through that. It'll be a time of teaching, and it'll be a wonderful time until it ends. Then we read there at Revelation chapter 20, verse 7. Then Satan's released from his prison, from the abyss. Then he'll go out into the 4 corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, and he will deceive the entire, not just some, but the entire inhabited earth in those future days. And it's at that time, after Christ's 1,000-year kingdom ends, then one will go through, eventually we'll go through a severe testing. And all this ties into what Satan brings up out of the abyss with him, the beast and its image, and imposing harsh rules upon persons to accept the image of the beast and in their right hand and forehead, and those who don't will not be able to buy and sell. All that ties into this great test, the great tribulation. And many will succumb to the demands of the beast. They will be made afraid. But at the same time, if one reads the account there at Revelation chapter 13, I believe it's at verse 4, in those future days, many will believe that this beast, which is a government that the dragon will establish on the earth in future days, it will be something wonderful, something beneficial to the people, and they will not want to see it go away. In fact, right there at verse 4 of Revelation chapter 13, the people will have this sentiment that who's like the beast, who can do battle with it. The world in those future days will believe that the beast will be invincible, that nothing can stand up against it, not even God. So why would they want to see something that benefits them, something that provides them peace and security, or peace and safety? And that's what the beastly government will do. That's how it's going to deceive the world, by giving them the inhabitants of the world in those days those things. Recall now at Matthew chapter 4, what did the devil offer Jesus? All the kingdoms of the world and their glory. Well, in those future days, Satan the devil will also give all of the inhabitants of the world in those future days peace and safety, a beautiful and wonderful environment where they'll feel safe, they'll prosper in exchange for what? For worship. Worshiping the beast and its image. That's no different from what Satan offered Christ. I'll give you all these things and their glory. I'll give you all these kingdoms and their glory if you worship me. It's no different from what the dragon, when he's released from the abyss and he goes out to deceive all the inhabited earth, in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, it's no different. He's going to say, look, I'll give you all this. I'll make you feel safe and secure. You have plenty of food to eat. You'll be happy. You'll go to bed at night and rest peacefully. But in exchange for what? That you worship me. Now, the dragon is clever. He's not going to go to a person and ask them directly, I need you to worship me, because they're not going to see him. He's not going to speak to them directly. He speaks through things. And what he's going to speak through in those future days, we're told what that is. It's his image. He establishes an image, and it's going to be through that. If persons will worship that, then they'll be given all those wonderful things that'll make them feel safe and secure and happy. That's why it's written, and then they shall cry, peace and safety. They can become very comfortable, and then bam, it's going to come upon them. It's going to blindside them. That expression, and then they shall cry peace and safety, does not apply to our time period today. That's something yet future. Okay, so the point of this video here is to show that this right here, folks, that's not the reality. No. We should be serious-minded and realize that we're on a sinking ship. And when these individuals like this believe that somehow they're going to escape what's to come in this made-up teaching called a rapture. When folks like this, who call themselves air quote Christians, and they're all happy and everything within their own little silos without looking at the whole world of people starving and struggling with famine and war and disease, these smiles are going to be wiped away when they see that, I thought we were going to escape all this. You are going to have to endure all that. And these smiles are going to turn into fear and confusion, because you've been told that you're going to go to heaven and that you're going to escape what's to come upon this world, this evil world that God has a time stamp on for its destruction. You're not going to escape. So be careful, folks. We must be sober. And as Jesus said, be watchful, for you do not know in what hour your master comes. And that he's going to come like a thief in the night. Does a thief, think about this, does a thief announce to the person that he's going to steal from that he's coming? No. A thief's going to come at a time that you would least expect. That's why Jesus would say, be watchful, for you do not know when your master is going to come. This is R. Dromaris. Thank you for listening.